Good morning and welcome to the DC SBDC Business Summit. I'm here with my friend.
Brian Seliber. Good morning, everybody.
Okay, I am a Community Business Development Officer for BB&T Bank, and you all get a unique opportunity to have a banker-to-banker interview, a conversation around how to best prepare for a line of credit or a lending request. I know that we both agree that probably leveraging credit correctly is the thing that most businesses need to kind of go to the next level. And a lot of times we hear banks aren't lending. Have you ever heard that before? Mm-hmm. Well, we're here to say that banks are lending, and we want to give you a unique insight on some of the different things that can help you be in the best position for that request. So maybe if you want to give a little bit of background around yourself and the organization that you're with, and I'll do the same as well.
Yeah, okay. Sure thing. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this event, and to the SBDC for putting this on. It's a pretty awesome resource for small business owners in the community. I'm lucky to be a part of it. I'm Brian Seliber. I'm a small business banker with M&T Bank. Been around since 1856, and M&T has very slowly moved from Buffalo, New York, humble beginnings, down to the DC metro area. This is kind of the newest frontier for M&T. And I started, this is the only place I've worked. I've been with M&T for 5 years, came out of college in Southern Virginia, was in the management development program that a lot of banks have, and afforded me some pretty nice opportunities to get a fairly holistic view of kind of the background and the foundation of the bank, and was in our branch network for a couple of years there, and then transitioned last year to our small business banking division, because like you, I'm sure I really get a rush out of learning from business owners and getting to know entrepreneurs and hearing about how they are doing what they're doing, and I feel pretty passionately that the banks do have some resources that at the right time can be extremely useful to get somebody from where they are to the next level. So it's a pretty cool place to be.
I like what you said. I call it turning your passion into profit. So a lot of business owners are really passionate about what they do and how they do it, and we have the opportunity to kind of help them execute on that. So I am with BB&T Bank. BB&T Bank has been around since 1872. It started as a small farmers bank, and now today we're one of the top financial institutions in the United States. We start at the tip of Pennsylvania all the way down to the Florida Keys, out into Texas. Our insurance business is probably larger than our banking business. We're the 5th largest insurance brokerage in the United States, and we pride ourselves on making sure that every client that we meet has the perfect client experience. So we're reliable, you can count on us to get the job done, we're responsive to the needs of our clients, very competent. BB&T is one of the best training organizations for bankers, so if you want to come over, Brian, you let me know. And then also, we are empathetic. My father is a small business owner, so at a very young age, I knew what it took and what it looked like to kind of just have that crazed state. And I call it craze in the most affectionate way possible. But turning your passion into profit is something that I get a rush over as well. Yeah. So let's talk about lending. So, and maybe we'll just go back and forth. If you have some questions, you can ask me. And this will be from the perspectives of 2 different institutions, 2 great institutions. But we'll just kind of give you some of our insight. And feel free to ask questions as well. If you have a question, there's a mic located to my left here, and you can ask the question, and we'll just kind of keep this going. So first question for you, what type of required documentation is typically needed for a business loan, and should someone consider putting down a down payment? You know, maybe talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure thing. First thing would be it should start with a handshake. If you don't have a good relationship with a banker, then that's the first place to start, because if you are of the mind that you're, as a small business owner, that you are going to just send everything by email, do everything back and forth that way, that's usually not going to A, get you the best terms, or B, give you the best experience, just from my perspective. Meeting in person, and then being prepared with the bare minimum of the past couple of years' personal tax returns for the owner or owners, whether it's a one-person shop or there are multiple stakeholders that own the entity. Bringing your personal tax returns for the past 3 years will show your personal financial snapshot, and that includes and then the bank will also have a document asking to gauge your personal net worth. Every bank will have something, whether they call it a personal financial statement or some kind of document or two, to just show a snapshot of where you have your savings and any personal debt you have. That's the first layer, especially if it's a startup company. You might have great projections and a beautiful business plan, but you have to show your financial standing as the owner. And then beyond that, whether it's a startup or not, that's what you have to begin with. And then beyond that, if you have some business background or some business history to show, if it's not a brand new company, but you want to take it to the next level and you think a commercial loan or line of credit would be appropriate, then the past 3 years business tax returns as well, because just like your personal tax history shows your personal financial picture, business tax returns will have a snapshot balance sheet. They'll have a profit and loss income statement for the year end, and that'll help the bank. That's a good starting out point to show the bank, look, this doesn't tell the whole picture, but this shows how much money we made, how much we kept as profit, what some of our major expenses were. So that's the starting out point. Personal financial statement to show the net worth of all the people involved, all the majority or minority owners, and then tax returns to show what the past couple of years have been like.
Okay, so if I heard you correctly, it's what, 3 years, personal and business tax returns, personal financial statement. I would just add to that, it's also nice to put some business financials in there. If you have profit and loss statements for the current quarter, that's pretty good. Also, your income statement and your balance sheet. That's really, really important. And the professionalism of those documents absolutely matter. So work with different organizations like SCORE or your CPA or your accountant, because you want to be able to articulate that with your banker. We're looking for you to be an advocate for your business. So to be able to show that information to us and say, you know, well, I grew 15% here, or, you know, I'm really paying maybe 2% more than I would like in this area, that lets us know that you truly understand the business financials of your business. And you don't have to be a scholar in that, but you've spent a lot of time on this project, on your baby. So being able to communicate that to your banker, it really helps us be able to pick the right options for you. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
All right. So you mentioned business plan. You know, how important is the business plan in the lending process, would you say?
Sure. If it's a startup business, if this is something new that you don't have years of track record and history to show, then it's everything. You're not getting a business loan with a traditional bank without it, and it's got to be pretty thorough. That's why the SBA, Small Business Administration, has programs and organizations like the DC Small Business Development Center to help folks bolster their business plan and figure out what items to include and what details to include, because if the bank, we'll get into some of the key ratios the banks use later, but if the bank doesn't have several years of business history to inform its calculations of how much cash is flowing through and how much money you keep, we have to use projections. And while that's not guaranteed, we all know that because they're just what you project, what you reasonably expect to accomplish, we need to use something. And you, the business owner or potential business owner, should be the subject matter expert. Your banker should know coming in or be able to learn quickly enough to be dangerous and have an informed conversation with you about the type of work you're proposing to do. But yeah, you need to be able to explain in pretty great detail, several pages, and going to an organization like this to get some feedback and some coaching is key. Because to your point before, if it looks like you threw it together real quick, then you probably did, and it might not hold up when a big bank like BB&T or M&T does its formal credit review. So you want to have, the projections for what you expect the first couple of years in business to show that you've done some market research and you have a pretty good idea that it's not just your gold standard A+ best case scenario, but also what you think is reasonable. Maybe not the best case scenario, but what is fair.
Sure, and I'll say that even if you're in business, every 6 months you should review your business plan. I say it's a 6 months rule. Check your credit, clean your teeth, and review your business plan. This is because things are always changing. The supply and demand needs of your business could change. The organization structure of your business could change. But every 6 months, you want to look at that and make sure it's up to date, because you never know when that next opportunity is just going to arrive. You want to have your business plan ready to go should you need it for a bid or for a credit request. And it's very easy to sit down with someone like Brian or myself. We hope that you have great relationships with your banker. If not, come see us, me first, after the meeting, just joking. But, your banker should have a copy of that as well, and should be able to say, okay, well, last year we said that this is what we want to do. Are we there yet? What steps have we made to get there? The DC SBDC has some great resources. If you're looking for a template for a business plan, you can go as far as like 20 plus pages to maybe I'm just starting and here's 5 pages of my best work and work with me. But start somewhere and kind of go from there. Brian, you mentioned some ratios that we kind of consider when we're looking at a request. Now, this is top secret, so I hope you have your pens out. We normally don't share this information, even though we may or may not be on live stream right now. But what financial ratios should a business owner just keep top of mind, just so they know how their business is performing?
Sure. I'd say the main two that come to mind to me are really common sense, but with all the clutter and all the stuff you hear, all the info you could find on Google, if you look this stuff up, it could definitely get overwhelming. The keys that I would say for any business owner, whether it's a new company or not, before you go into your bank, you should have a very good idea of your personal cash flow, and that you can think of your debt to income ratio, whichever term you want to use. Have an idea of, do you make more money in your current job than you pay every month in your mortgage, any car loans, any credit cards? What that ratio at least starts to look like, because, again, why I said it comes down to common sense, even though people don't always talk about it this way, is individually as a business owner, if you are making, say, twice as much in salary every month than you are required by creditors to pay them every month, then you could say that you're able to keep 50% of the money you're making. That would be bankable. To simplify it, if you were the opposite and your mortgage payment were $2,000 a month, your income from your day job is $1,000 a month, or you extrapolate those numbers to a larger scenario, any bank or anybody, even a friend, if you told that to them, they would run away and say that formula's not going to work.
Yeah.
And then that leads me to the second ratio that we usually kick off with. We call it the debt service coverage ratio. Again, there are other terms you can use, but the general idea, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty because that is stuff you can Google to see all the variables in the formula, but the idea of debt service is the debt to income conversation as it applies to your business. Does your company make more in profit each year, if it's an established company, than you pay in current loan payments, credit card payments, all your expenses, all your payroll? If the company, and again, getting back to common sense, if you really simplify and dumb it down, it's, does the company make more money month to month and year to year than it has to pay? Does it comfortably not just make enough money to perfectly pay off its debt obligations, but is there an extra cushion in there too? I'm sure every bank, it can vary a little bit, but in general, the bank wants to see not just a 1-to-1 ratio there, but some extra, depending on the industry. If it's a target industry that the bank loves to do business with, that's CPAs, attorneys, the medical field, we still want to see, some would say, a 1.25 to 1 ratio of profit coming in versus your debt obligations going out. So, and the reason for that, why it's not just a 1-to-1, and we want more than that, is because say your company has a downturn or there's some seasonality, and next quarter when you need to borrow money, your profits go down 10%. The bank and the business owner shouldn't want to have to worry, if my profitability goes down just a little bit for a short period of time or a long period of time, I don't want to worry if I can pay all my bills. So since we're talking about business lending and a potential new loan or line of credit for a company, the bank is gonna not necessarily think about the worst case scenario, but the banks do have to think about what's the worst that could happen, and if there's a downturn in business for whatever reason, foreseen or unforeseen, are we comfortable that even with a slight dip, they'd still be able to pay their bills, including us?
Yeah.
Banks always want to be paid first.
Yes, we do. We do. It's important. And you brought up a great thing. So if I'm a business owner and I'm looking at my, my expenses and I'm looking at what I'm bringing in, divide those two together. Is there a magic number that I should kind of look at to see if I'm favorable or if I need to maybe save more and focus more on cash? Do you have a magic percentage, or does that exist?
Yeah, for the target segments I mentioned before, again, professional services, medical, dental, the ones that tend to be more stable. They'll have clients more than once in a blue moon. They have multiple people come in all the time. It could be 1.25% or 1.25 to 1, and that means that after all your bills are paid, you still have 25% of the profit left over.
Mm-hmm.
With a startup, with our projections, the bank's probably going to want to see even more than that, because again, projections will often be some of the very optimistic, rosy view of what you expect to happen, and the bank's not here to say that you're wrong as the business owner putting your projections together, but we're going to take the conservative approach and say, well, this is what we hope to happen. We're all incentivized if we do business together for it to succeed, but if it doesn't, then for a startup, or if somebody is buying commercial real estate for their established company, we might want to see closer to 2. I would say no magic number, but the bank, the idea you should think about is the bank is always going to want to see quite a bit of leftover profit to pay any unforeseen or any reasonable unforeseen expenses that aren't on the table right now.
That's good, and I'm glad you explained it that way, because I meet with business owners sometimes, and they're like, I made a profit, okay, but after you paid your bills, what's your true profit? So coming to an institution, you have to have kind of like realistic expectations around the amount of money that you want. So let's go to that. Do you have any recommendations for the business owner who's having this conversation with us? Maybe they're 2 years in business and now they're ready to say, okay, I need some type of credit vehicle to help get me to the next level. Their ratios kind of look okay. How much should they borrow? Like, what's a comfortable amount? I know it could vary based off of industry and whatever the need may be, but how much? What's a expected amount that they should kind of lean towards, or a ratio or formula that they can think of when looking for that right amount?
Sure. Yeah, it's a fair question, because there are some myths out there. There are some common tropes that may or may not hold water. 2 that I hear about all the time are the idea that somebody in a somewhat established business could expect to set up a credit line, if that's what they're in the market for, of 10% of their annual sales.
Yeah.
That is the magic number. I also hear a lot of folks in the banking field say that, oh, the bank will look to finance a credit line of up to 80% of their accounts receivable if it's that kind of company, a contractor that doesn't get paid right away. So a credit line would help with the cash flow lag. So in some cases that works fine, and those numbers make sense. But I would say rather than stick to those, because it's totally situational. If somebody comes in and the owner has very little cash personally, and the business is doing okay, not great, but doing solid, but the owner or owners are not financially robust when you look at their personal financial background, then they might not be eligible, it might not be a good fit to go up to those levels. So I would say go in expecting to explain why you're requesting a certain amount, because I would say just human nature, if somebody comes to me, they're the subject matter expert on their industry, but if they come in and say, hey, I'm applying for $500,000 for a loan, first question I ask is, why? What's going on? What are you working on? And then they tell me, well, the warehouse I'm looking to buy costs $250,000, and then this happened recently.
Okay.
And then I gave them that look and raised the eyebrows like, what's the other money for? And then they were like, oh, just, I don't know, in case other stuff comes up. And that immediately, just again, human nature made me wonder, is this individual really prepared? Does he have a true understanding of what he needs the money for? Because there's no good reason to pay a bank interest if you don't need it, if you don't want to put it to work. So I would say have a good idea of what you need the money for. Obviously, if it's for short-term working capital, because you are a government contractor and you need to float the payroll before you get paid by your by your general contractor, however that works, then yes, you can build in a bit of a cushion and maybe set up a credit line for more than you immediately need. That would make sense, because what if a bigger project comes up next quarter? But it shouldn't be perceivable as just a number you pulled out of the sky.
Yeah.
It should be directly applicable to, well, here's the need, here's the new contract I won, here's what my payroll will be for the first, say, 2 or 3 months, and I'm going to get paid 60 days after we break ground. So if you and the banker can add up, all right, here's what your reasonable working capital expenses might be for those 2 months, then maybe look to set up a credit line to cover 3 months.
Yeah,
because if things go well, then you might need more next time, and you don't want to keep having that same conversation.
You know, I love your explanation around that, because a lot of times we want to lend, but we want to lend for a good cause. So if you've been able to say, this is going to support my payroll, this money is going to go towards that, and you've actually thought it out from A to Z, then we're on the same page. But if you're just like, you know what, $100,000 will do it, I need $100,000, that's just going to be a little bit more difficult. And then also, you know, if you are in business, and I'll say this all the time, and you have $1 million idea, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get $1 million line of credit because you have $1 million idea. And once you go through the steps, if maybe you can make it with $10,000 or $50,000, then that's the conversation you have with your banker. You be flexible, because the banker wants to work with you. We want to work together. So really like how you did that. There's no right amount. The right thing to do is to kind of map it out, calculate it, and then come up with that figure with your banker. So
yeah.
good answer there.
We don't operate in Shark Tank. This is a conversation about debt financing. We're the banks, we're not looking to take an equity stake or ownership of your company.
Yeah.
We're incentivized by your success so that our clients will be able to pay back their loans. We benefit from those interest payments. Our clients benefit from the capital the banks provide at the exact right time, the exact right amount can help them get from where they are now to the next level up. So it should be mutually beneficial. Yeah. For sure.
So we talked about the required documentation. So you know you need your business financials, your personal tax returns. We talked about profit and loss statements, income statements. We spoke to the type of the amount that you could possibly need. Let's talk a little bit about what challenges do you see often, maybe like your top 3, that prevent individuals from getting approved for loans. What do you see, and how can we overcome that?
Sure. Yeah, it's a relevant question because every situation is different. That's why we've made effort not to box in magic numbers or exact formulas, because for every case it's different. And one thing I would definitely want to hammer home to the folks listening is that until you are a very large company, and I'm talking $25-50 million company, you, the owner or owners, are on the hook for your baby. Even if you run a $10 million business that's been around forever, you are going to have to sign, wherever you go, if you're going to a traditional bank like M&T and BB&T, you are going to have to sign your name and guarantee repayment. So a lot of folks come in with the expectation that, well, my personal credit is challenged for whatever reason, and it happens. Not making any judgment, but regardless of what the story is at all, the bank, again, until you're one of those super large commercial companies, you as the owner are going to have to attest for the bankability of your company. And that means if your personal credit score is challenged, again, there's no magic number, but one threshold is if you're a solo entrepreneur and your personal credit score is below, say, 675, again, no judgment, but just a reality of the industry norms. That's a workable threshold saying if my score is below that, then I've got some work to do. It doesn't mean that you can't get financing. It all depends. If you have a credit score that's 650, that's a bit below average, but you happen to have $1 million sitting in your savings account, the bank will be able to get comfortable. Again, I'm exaggerating, but the bank would be able to get comfortable with a moderate credit request for your company if all else is well, because we would say, well, the credit history is challenged for whatever reason. Hopefully we'll have that dialogue so we know what's at play, but we would say, well, even if the company doesn't have a great couple months and they become challenged, the individual owner we're working with, they could pay this back. They
Yeah.
could reach into their pocket and pay it back. And then the opposite, if somebody has not a lot of savings, just for whatever reason, then it's tough. Even if your credit score is sterling, again, that helps, but I would say they're all kind of variables in the formula. Mm-hmm. So the inverse of the example I just gave, if somebody's credit score is awesome, but they have very little in savings and they go into the bank expecting to get 100% financing for a new venture, it's probably not going to happen. The bank wants, the phrase skin in the game gets thrown out there a lot, but the bank, all of our banks, we are going to want to see somebody prepared to jump in board with both feet and say, hey, this project's going to cost $100,000. I don't have a ton of proof to guarantee it'll work. I think it'll work. Here's some evidence and market research. Here's my background of paying my bills. But if that person comes to the table and says, and I have $20,000 to set aside, so I have, that equity skin in the game to show I'm serious, because if this investment doesn't work, this venture doesn't work, not only does the bank lose out, but I'm out $20,000, then again, I'm excited to talk to that person. It's not feasible for everybody, and I get that. That can create some challenges in getting approved for a loan or making your company bankable. But if somebody's in the position to do that and come to the table expecting to be partners in that way and linked financially, then it makes it a whole lot easier.
Yeah, personal credit is really important, and I think I hear that often. Well, this is my personal situation. Let's talk about the business. No, you guys are married. It's together. Another thing that you said is skin in the game. It absolutely makes a difference. Just think about it this way. If I was like, hey, Brian, I really want to buy this car. Why don't you give me, $50,000, and I just have my hand out. You're like, what?
I promise I'll pay you back.
I promise I'll pay you back. But if I said, Brian, look, I have $10,000. I'll pay you back based on this amount of work that I have going. Will you give me the 50? It just makes the situation a little different. Yeah. So if you have some type of skin in the game, okay, that can be cash or assets. If not, still have the conversation, because we have unsecured and secured lines of credits and loans available for you to use. Another thing I want to bring up, I meet businesses sometimes and they're like, I have cash in the bank, we're going to be really successful. I don't really need a loan. I don't want to touch the loan. I don't want to touch the bank's money.
I knew that was coming.
It's coming, yeah. Because it's a great situation to be in, but I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on, what do we say to the business owner that's cash heavy? Why would they need to look at lending as an option?
In cases like that, because I hear it all the time as well, okay. And those are the people I love to talk to, because it means they've been at least reasonably successful already, not feeling like they're relying in too many ways on the bank, and that's great, because again, it's not free. We're not offering a donation or a grant. It's money that needs to be paid back. If somebody never needs it, they shouldn't pay interest. But we've talked a bit already about the idea of a line of credit, and again, depending on your industry, it may be suitable or not as important, but for many companies, especially in the DC area, a lot of contractors, both hard hat contractors, who I work with a lot of, those electricians, painters, plumbers, remodelers, but then government contractors as well. There can be ebb and flow, whether it's seasonality or based on the weather, based on the financial strength of your client base. Some things that the government can affect. Living in DC is interesting. And setting it up now when things are good, I totally get there could be a lack of momentum, and we all, as employees of big companies, but especially people that own their own business, we've worked with enough people in that position. I know there are a million things, and there are fires to put out, and customers that might have an issue. It's so easy for the idea of setting up baseline foundational financing. It's very easy for that to always be like third or fourth on your priority list, but never get to number one until I call you that 10th time and you're like, God, I want Brian to go away. So fine, I'll fill out this application. I'll set this up because I agree it's a good idea. It's tough to get somebody to action when they don't feel they need it. But the reason I recommend it, and I feel earnest about doing it and can go to bed peacefully at night, not think I'm pushing people into it, is because you never know whether you've been super successful for years. You never know when circumstances totally outside your control could change things, or when some super massive opportunity comes up and you want to take advantage of it. Good example, probably the best relevant example, somebody I worked with this year, they've been a client for a couple of years, and they do drywall and construction all around the DC area. There's plenty of companies like them. There's plenty of work for them to do. They work with some of the largest builders in the area, and they were cash rich. When I met them, they had 6 figures in their bank account, and that was consistent. As part of the credit review we looked, they try to keep at least $100,000 in their account at all times. Mm-hmm. They did not scream like they were a company that needed to borrow money, but I explained to them, and we were introduced by a mutual connection that established trust pretty quickly. They were interested in what I said, what I had to say, and I explained that if you set up this line of credit now while you're cash rich, their credit situation was very strong, then having this additional source of cash, if and only if you need it, there wasn't any cost to set up the line of credit. I was like, do it now when you're bankable. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't feel like it's an emergency, because it's not. Mm-hmm. But set it up now, and then some of your big contractors might have an even bigger commercial project for you, and they'll ask you. Some contractors, some GCs like that, will straight up ask for proof that their subcontractors can foot the bill and afford all the stuff to go into the project with the assumption they won't be paid back for a couple months. And then these guys, again, they drag their feet a bit at the beginning. They're like, it's not top of mind for us. We got them approved for a line of credit that was moderate for their needs, and then I just finished up with them a month or so ago to triple the size of that line of credit, because they had a few instances in the past year where we're hit contracting. Their big contractor that we all know gave them some at-bats and said, hey, we've got these big projects. You guys have done some great work. Can you afford to do this, though? Or do we need to bid somebody else? And they called me. They were all pumped because they were like, thank God we had that line of credit so we could prove, we're viable. We can make that happen and go to work, and we won't sweat getting paid for later. Because, again, everything is strong about these guys, but still, hardly anybody can afford to not be paid for their work for a quarter. Yeah. So it was great, because otherwise, if they didn't have that line of credit well before they ever needed it, then they would have had to just decline the opportunity, and then their profitability wouldn't have been as high. They wouldn't have gotten that experience, so it works awesome for them. Not every business is in that position, but I encourage folks to get creative and say, think of all the potential opportunities you might want to bid on or get into. And then again, because there's no like down payment to setting up a credit line, do it now while things are good, so that if there's a downturn in business, or that's the negative side. Nobody likes to think about what if everything goes wrong, but think about if things go really right and it's awesome, and you get this awesome opportunity that falls in your lap, and you need to prove either that you can afford it, because some people ask, or just to feel comfortable. You don't want to take all your money in your bank account, throw it at this opportunity, and just really hope that nothing weird happens. Because you never know.
There were a couple of gems in there. The best time to apply for a line of credit is when you don't need it. That's what I heard you say.
And nobody likes hearing that, because we're all busy, and we're all sitting in traffic, and we don't have time for that. I totally get that. But finding a way to do it.
And then I've never heard it on a positive spin like that, having the money available so that you can go after larger opportunities. Maybe it's just the banker in me, but I think of the fraud. Just today I had a client call me, and they said, Schnearia, I have my card in my wallet, but for the past 10 minutes, $100 keeps coming out my account every 15 minutes. So I'll let you guys do the math on that. So the card is in his pocket, but $100 is being taken out. So, of course, we block the card, we stop everything, but think about that in a larger scheme. This is your business. You're at a seminar, or you're taking care of stuff, and then you get an alert that your account is going below. That line of credit could be something that could just help you sort through whatever is going on, why the fraudsters are going at your account. And I know M&T is probably similar to BB&T. We have all sorts of things in place to help you kind of rebound from that. But initially, think about if you had the line of credit. Okay, it's okay, we can take care of this, why call Brian or take care of Schnearia? So that was pretty good. We're coming towards the end of our session, so I want to just thank you, Brian, for being so transparent and giving us some information. How can individuals get in touch with you if they want to maybe talk to you about some of the services M&T has to offer?
Yeah, sure thing. I've got cards from people here. Hats off to you guys for making time in your busy weeks to be at an event like this. And then beyond that, I guess LinkedIn would be a way. It's tough to Google a banker. If you Google our names, I don't really know what happens. You can find out a lot about M&T and BB&T online, but yeah, just look us up till you find us. I would share my phone number, but you can find us.
So we are being live streamed today. You can go to the DCSBDCsummit.org site to see a replay of this presentation. And if you're already on there, hello. Any questions from the audience before we completely log off? Okay. Oh, we have one.
So I work with a lot of small business owners, and from what I've been told, the best way to, it's all about relationships with banking. So what would you suggest in terms of if, I was doing some work with small businesses, the best way for them to develop those relationships with their bankers?
I love it. That was one of my questions that I prepared because I love. It's a similar. Thanks for asking, because it's a similar line of thinking to your question before of why apply for credit before you need it. Why go seek out that partnership when there's no fire, when everything's fine, you don't need anything at that moment. Because if you walk into your local branch and say, "Hey, I want to apply for a $100,000 business loan," I learned to just want to go into the kitchen in the break room and just avoid that person, because there could be some great experiences. Some people just operate that way. They don't care about networking as much as just, oh, I've got this need, I'll go in, and sometimes it could be a great opportunity. More often than not, that told me that they didn't plan ahead, they don't have a strong network, or they're being reactive rather than proactive. So if somebody were wired to do that and say, hey, you guys are local, I have this idea or this venture or this company, and I foresee beautiful things coming from it, and I got good advice that I should meet with a banker, we would love that. Because again, it doesn't happen all the time. Usually folks are walking in because they've been turned down somewhere else or haven't had any luck. So going in to explain, do the handshake and say, here's my idea, you guys are local or you recommended to me, because again, we represent two very strong companies, and there are plenty of other good community banks out there. There's a ton around DC, but ask friends, ask business colleagues of yours, somebody you trust, or your accountant, your business attorney, and ask for a recommendation. And there's plenty of good bankers out there from different institutions, but just to say, hey, here's my idea, this is what I'm working on. Down the road, I might have a need for this credit product or just this advice or this partnership, or my accountant said I should get to know you. Again, I admire folks that are proactive and plan that way, but it just avoids the fire drills at the end. Because if you wait, to your point, if you wait until you do need a loan that day, then everybody's rushed, there's pressure, the banker will naturally might be skeptical or at least have their guard up. If you go in with a collaborative approach, I mean, that just sets the tone for a successful partnership. Doesn't happen a lot, but I really appreciate it when people do that.
And I would just add that I'll go back to my 6 months rule. Every 6 months, do those things, but go to your banker and review your credit package, whether or not you're in a position to apply or not. Have them look at your business plan, take a look at your credit report, take a look at your business financials, and just have a conversation around it. And doing that every 6 months, you're going to start to talk about the weather and sports and your goals for that business. I think that's the best way to kind of calendar it, because I know our schedules are so busy. So every 6 months, put a tickler in there to sit down and talk to your banker, and they'll be so receptive for that, because that gives us an idea. And plus, there's promotions and different things that are going on, and you want to make sure that you get that information firsthand. So thank you for that question. So we are now at the end of our segment. Thank you so much for your attention, for your questions. Oh, we get a hand clap. That's awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. And enjoy the rest of the summit today. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Good job.